Here to resume our luncheon session is once again Conference Chair Lloyd Kirk.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch, and I hope you enjoyed the morning sessions this morning. And I don't know about you, but we really were blessed with some great speakers this morning. When it's hard to pick what session to go to, then we succeeded, I think, as a committee. And I hope you took advantage of that and the breaks. And one thing I want to thank again, this event would not happen without the Planning Committee. And I would like the Planning Committee to please stand to be recognized. Every one of you, please stand. Everyone, come on. And, at DEQ, we believe in teamwork, from Steve's floor down to Scott Thompson's floor, where I work with the Land Protection Division, and we really work as a team when working on a project. This would not have been done without my team. Okay, and my team, I would like all four of you to stand, please. And I mean that. You hear teamwork all the time, but if you raise a family or you're in athletics, you're only as good as the weakest link. And we have a great staff. So we all work in unison. One thing I wanted to, this is not on the program, and this is, in fact, not very many people know what I'm going to do right now. So they say that all the time. Okay, I heard that. Okay, my right ear still works. But anyway, here to make a special, and this is from our planning committee. But we're going to make a special presentation today on behalf of our conference committee. I'd like the director for Crone Dunleavy and former Secretary of Environment, Miles Tobin, to come up. And also joining Miles is Mary Ellen Turnis, senior partner at McAfee and Taft. I'd like for you to come up. And Miles, if you don't mind.
Can you hear me? Yes. All right, in the beginning, there were brownfields. All right, well, not the very beginning. We had one good day. But the next day, there were, only we didn't know it. But you know who knew it? Barbara Rausch knew that there were brownfields. And when we finally came around to realizing that there was a more productive, a more pragmatic solution to to remediation of contaminated properties, Barbara Rausch was there waiting for us when we arrived, smiling. And I've been very lucky to have had Barbara Rausch as my co-counsel. I've had her as my lawyer, and I've had her opposite me now in now that I'm in the private sector. And I don't like to say opposite because it suggests that she kind of an adversarial relationship. But Barbara has always been just wonderfully creative and forward-looking and a delight to work with as we've tried to figure out the right approach to addressing contamination at impacted properties. And now she's retiring. And so I got this piece of wood to try to fill up the hole in our professional and personal lives that she's going to leave when she goes. But it's not going to work. And so we're going to use the other side of it for you, Barbara, and I'd like to read this to you from the committee. The Oklahoma Brownfields Planning Committee presents to Barbara Rausch, for her 21 years of public service, this plaque with grateful appreciation for her dedication to the environmental and economic well-being of the state of Oklahoma and a true ambassador of Brownfields. Ambassador Rausch, thank you very much.
There's more. There's more. On behalf of the Planning Committee, which includes, and many speakers, which include many lawyers and environmental professionals who have worked with Barbara for so many years, who will miss her sense of humor, her wisdom, her continuity, her brutal honesty, her candor, her creativity, her partnership, and just the connection we've had with Barbara for so many years. She's been such a wonderful professional to work with. Excellent counsel. Thank you. And here we have the Planning Committee and many friends of Barbara, FOBs, have just gathered together a few mementos and personal tokens for Barbara to help her in her retirement. Thank you again, Barbara.
I would tell you that I'm stunned speechless, and I am stunned, but I'm not known for being speechless. So I want to say thank you very much. You know, it takes a whole lot of people working a long, long time to come to a point like this, and I just appreciate each and every one of you who've worked with me all along the way. So thank you very much.
That thing weighed a ton. I don't know what was in there. Golly, 2 women are carrying that. But anyway, and I hope you don't mind me doing that. But that's what makes this state great. And we have a lot of public servants that work for the state and spend a lot of time. And Barbara's been an example for a lot of state employees. So thank you, Barbara. So, introducing our luncheon speaker today is someone who knows much about the redevelopment of Oklahoma City. He's a member of the DEQ board. He's president of Cardinal Engineering. He's president of the Oklahoma Community Foundation, and he was the 2012 recipient of the Neil Morton Award from D.A. McGee Award for Redevelopment on 9th and Broadway. It's my honor and privilege to welcome Steve Mason.
Lloyd, thank you, and thanks for everyone being here that's making a difference in Oklahoma City, and particularly our urban core. I think Larry and I are asked today to talk about reinvesting in downtown, which is a very generic title, and what I think we're really talking about is what we're doing in this downtown and why this downtown is a special downtown. When I grew up as a child, I learned about kind of Soviet spheres of influence. When the Soviets were going to take over Southeast Asia, they were going to roll into France, and we were always worrying about those that were around us and how we interacted with them. You know, I also learned about good and bad gangs. Gangs have a bad connotation. As a kid, I learned about what the good gangs were. You know, they were our church, our scouts, our families, our schools. And it's these good people that we hang out around with us, and that's very important. I've recently had the pleasure to be involved with the Oklahoma City Community Foundation for 15 years. Which is a $610 million bank for our nonprofits. And Larry and I are both a trustee there. And that puts out $30 million a year into our community. And in that process, I've learned a lot about our community and the 300 nonprofits we worry about and people that need dental care to the dogs that we help take care of. And it really has taught me a lot about our community. And what's neat about this urban core is all those things are working here. The spheres of influence are overlapping. You know, we're all part of a really good gang. You know, Larry might flash the gang sign for us, but it's a good gang down here. And and it started with the citizens that voted for maps a long time ago, that believed in it. You know, we have a government that's really good. Your speaker yesterday morning I guess what he left was he's going to tell everybody about maps, and that's why Oklahoma City's working. That's part of it. Part of it also is our government. You know, we have a government that's honest. They're high integrity. We trust them with maps money. We trust the decisions they make. You know, Mayor Bartlett yesterday talked about the Brownsville restoration, the collaboration in Tulsa. You know, it's all these influences that come together and they work well. And we got a lot of investors and a lot of players in this urban core. And you know, and we have the obvious ones like, you know, Devon Energy. But we got a lot of little people also that are invested down here. You know, I own some buildings up at 9th and Broadway. I got plenty of little people up there doing crazy things, but they're part of this urban core that we're redeveloping. And when I go to the Thunder games, we get there early. We all get, for whatever reason you go to a Thunder game early, I go early to see the This Is Our City video. And you want to feel good about this community we're in. It says, this is our city. It doesn't say, this is one person's city. You know, you go to Fort Worth, and it's the Bass's Fort Worth. You go to Victory Arena, it's the Perot's Victory Arena. And the neat thing is that this is our city. And that video just puts goosebumps on me. And the neat thing about our city and this urban core that we're all working in was, if you looked about 5 years ago, we were comparing ourselves to other cities. And we'd say, well, we want to be like Dallas. We want to be like Chicago. If you've noticed and we were like a nervous teenager. If you've noticed recently, we've quit comparing ourselves to other cities. We learn from other cities. And it's like we're now a mature, confident adult as a city. And that's a very, very important change. And, you know, Larry Nichols and Devon, they're an important part of this, what's happening here. And a lot of it's the trust we have in our community leadership. And, you know, Larry Nichols and the whole gang over there, they're all about integrity. Much like all the leadership here is in Oklahoma City. You know, he's been chairman of our Chamber of Commerce. He's been the national chairman of the American Petroleum Institute. Currently, he's the chairman of what I call urban renewal, or ACURA. So we trust him to lead the efforts of how do we redevelop downtown. He's also chairman of the Mary Gardens Foundation, which is a beautiful place that he helped renovate. And, you know, so he's just a good man of integrity. And he's a good example of what we're doing here. As we know, he's the executive chairman of Devon Energy, which he and his dad founded in '71. You know, he went to Princeton, went to Michigan, did some legal work in D.C., but he came home. And that's neat that he came home. Because really what we're building here is we're building a city that we want our kids to come home to. You know, I know Carl Edwards is exciting. He has a child coming home. I'm excited. I've got 2 kids that came home. I have a daughter that last week said she might, when she was going to live abroad 2 years ago, and part of it is this city that we're building. So then Devon stuck downtown, and they kind of filled all their buildings up, and they said, well, where do we do? Where do we go? We go to the suburbs or wherever, and they said they liked what they saw that had already started downtown, and they stayed down here, and you know, they said they'd reinvest, and what they built is just amazing. And what's interesting is as we try to get people to invest in parts of our cities, we have what's called tax increment financing districts, where basically what it says is the ad valorem tax on a building, instead of going to the county says, well, we'll let the district keep that money to invest in sewers and streets, the thought being that that'll create jobs, and they'll get that money back that they've said we won't take for a while in these new jobs because people are living in houses. And that's called TIF financing. And to my knowledge, every TIF, you know, you take your money and use it on yourself. And we have 8 of them here, 8 TIF districts in Oklahoma City. So you take your TIF money and you build a parking garage for your employees. Or you take the TIF money and you build the sewer and water up to your building. Well, you know, what Larry and Devon said, they said, well, you know, our vision of this money, it's a bunch of money. It's about $120 million plus some geo bonds. We can build our building, but we want to help build the downtown. And therefore, you've seen Project 180, you've seen the renovated Mary Gardens, and I think you would challenge anywhere in this country where you found anyone that took TIF financing and said, I don't want it. I want to rebuild the downtown. And it's very admirable what, you know, Larry and Devon has done. So then they go build this 50-story building. And it's really interesting. You expect they're going to build a building with a bunch of guards because it's their building. They said, no. This is a community facility. They build a dining area that isn't big enough for all their employees. So they have to go eat elsewhere in Oklahoma City. And I get to go eat there, and that's really neat. And then they build this restaurant on top of the building that I get to eat in this fall. And that's going to be pretty cool. I've never had dinner in a 50-story building. I bet it'll be really neat. But, Larry and Devon are a really good example of how this is our city. And we got a kick-ass city, and I think Larry's going to talk about what he's been up to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'm trying to remember the gang sign, and somehow I don't think it's the sign I saw given on the Broadway extension earlier today. I think it must be some other sign other than that one, because it surely was not that one. So it is a pleasure to be invited to talk about our building and its impact on Devon and on the community. It has been a delightful project. I'm a little nervous talking about it because there are people in this room with Hines and Holder and Flintco who are actually doing the work and actually know all about the building and know more than I know. I'd rather talk to audiences where I know more than the audience knows. There are people here who know a whole lot more than I know, so I hope I get all this straight. First, let's start with the site itself, because the site is really an important thing about this. This slide shows Oklahoma City, and in red is the site that we'll select. And there's several things you will notice about that straight away. First, it's downtown. When word got out that we were thinking about building a new building, there were lots of people that had lots of land scattered around Oklahoma City that they thought would be nice for a corporate campus, something outside of downtown. We said, no, it will be downtown. That is non-negotiable. Why is that? As I've traveled around the country and indeed around the world on business, I have yet to find a vibrant city that did not have a vibrant downtown. And conversely, a vibrant downtown that was not leading a vibrant city. I've said that before. No one has ever come up to me and offered an example where that's not true. If someone does, no, I would like to know, because I don't think that really exists anywhere. If the downtown core goes, the entire city seems to go right there with it. So we wanted to build a building that would build on the growth that we've been getting in Oklahoma City, starting with what Ron Norick did with MAPS in 1992 and all the other projects. And we thought, as we look around the country, that there is a real movement away from going farther and farther out in suburbs, going farther and farther out. There is a movement that you see around this country of people coming back downtown, of renovating old areas, renovating real estate that's closer to downtown, and building there. Our building in many ways reflects the title of this conference, Rethink, Reinvest. We're certainly reinvesting about $850 million we're putting into this project. That's a good size reinvestment. Reinventing a whole part of downtown. Early on in this project, when we had thought in our own mind, had the site selected, I was listening to a real estate conference, and there were several people there saying that the west side of downtown is going to be dead for the rest of my life. And I thought, well, maybe not so fast there, not so fast. We may have a surprise in store for you. So the growth in this city has really been phenomenal. It started with Ron Norick when he started reinventing various things, and we've done that, transforming a dead and dying downtown into a vibrant one, transforming an old warehouse district into a brick town, transforming old alleyways into canals of all things, transforming a river that you could mow into a river that has real water in it and river boats that go up and down it. And in our case, transforming an old parking lot into a new center for our city, a new vibrant place for our own employees to work, and something that would really further the economic development of this city. So let's start. That was the site we have. Let's look at the history of that site, because as we learned after we looked at it, it indeed is a brownfield site. Back in the early 1900s, our site was the location for a trolley barn We had trolleys. It's hard for me to think of mass transit in 1910 in Oklahoma City, but I guess that's what a trolley is, because we certainly had one, and there was a trolley barn which was on our site, which undoubtedly led to some of the contamination that we ultimately found. With due respect to the city, this is the title of this old postcard says Rush Hour. I think there must have been something else going on in downtown at that day to have generated that crowd, because it doesn't look like rush hour to me. But it does show the vibrant activity that did exist in this city. Another side of the downtown area here. But with regard to our site, sometime in the 1930s, they tore down the old trolley warehouse. They then built a motor courtyard where cars could be fueled and serviced. That then was in the early 1950s, this 4-story parking garage that you see. Now you see it. This 4-story parking garage was built, which also had refueling centers in it. Not exactly a beautiful building, but nevertheless a parking garage. That was in turn torn down in the 1970s when IMP had come into Oklahoma City and had decided that we were going to redo downtown, and they tore down a lot of the old brick buildings to make way for a Galleria. There was going to be a huge downtown Galleria shopping center. They tore a lot of the city down, several blocks down, and started building. And this was our site that we chose. It was an old parking garage. It looks rather odd for a parking, because what you're seeing is, with those beams sticking up, that was the foundation for what was going to be a Galleria up on top of it. So it's not just a flat parking garage. It was built to be a basement. So when you're looking at it, it's not just an ugly parking garage, which it is. It really is a reminder of failure. It is a failure of a revitalization that they tried to do in the 1980s. They got it halfway built, and then because of the bust we had in this part of the country in the 1980s, it came to a grinding halt. And so you're seeing a project that was eliminated in midstream, and really a reminder of a failure. So we started our deconstruction of it and discovered that we did have a real, not only an ugly site, but a brownfield site. This is a picture of where we were doing the reconstruction, beginning to tear down the old parking garage. And as we tore it down, we had a rather successful track record. 100% of the building materials from this parking deck were diverted from landfill. The concrete was either used for erosion control. In some cases, it went to the Oklahoma Department of Transportation for coarse rock that they used in their construction. 500 tons of metal were removed and sent to recycling facilities. And a lot of the working light fixtures, about 500 of them that were in the old parking garage, because it had several levels going down, were also sent for reuse. So we reused 100% of the material as we tore down that parking garage. Once we got down to the bottom of the dirt and were able to really finish the environmental investigations, we discovered that we had a site that had been contaminated by fuel. We discovered 3 petroleum tanks that had been abandoned in some of the early deconstruction, undoubtedly coming from the old parking garage that was there in the 1940s and 50s. They had left behind both contaminated soil and contaminated water, a small plume of contaminated water. We worked with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission to remediate that. Removal was, the evacuation and removal was the method that was chosen. A lot of the soil, once it was cleaned up, was used by the city for covering up some of the waste fill as they're building layers of waste fill, so even that was used. We discovered an abandoned water well. So we discovered really a brownfield that we cleaned up. Although those of us in Oklahoma, I'm not sure we shouldn't use the term red fields instead of brownfields. Now, people from outside the state might not know what we're talking about, but those of us in, we said red fields, I'm not sure what that means. So, starting with this rather, plain brownfield, once we got it cleaned up, This is what we ended up with, a 50-story building. It's not just about the tower. It actually is 1.8 million square feet if you include it all. If you look down below, it's hard to see in this slide, you'll see two things. One is a 6-story rotunda, and then you also see a long building that gets absolutely no respect. It is 6 stories tall, but it does stretch for a block and a half long. Actually, 2 of them combined are a block and a half long. They have a combined square footage of 400,000 square feet. If you stuck that building on its side and gave it a floor plan the size of the Kerr-McGee building, now the Sandridge building, that building is about the same size as the Sandridge building, the old Kerr-McGee building, if you put it up on its side so that you could see it. But because of the things in that building, the restaurant and meeting rooms are things that were more suited to a large footprint that did not fit into a high-rise. Different shots of the building itself as it has been under construction. This model of the total site gives you a better view of the floor plan. On the right is the site plan. On the right is the Concord Hotel, which we also are in the process of totally remodeling and redoing. Then the tower that you can see next. In the middle is the glass rotunda. If you've not been over there, I would encourage you to go there. It's an ingenious design because it acts as a hub and spoke. The bottom 2 floors are actually open to the public. The top floors are behind our security, and yet as people walk around the stairway on that circles all the stairways that are inside of that rotunda, it's a way for them to go from the tower to the other parts of the complex. It looks like they're outside in the public, but they're really behind our security, so it gives a lot of dynamic feel to the rotunda at the same time. We did not want a building, as Steve mentioned, that was really removed from the city. So our building has a north, south, east, and west entrance that are totally open to the public. We did not want a building where the security was a perimeter fence that you had to go through. We wanted to the maximum extent we could to have a building that embraced downtown, that was a part of downtown, that everyone who is in downtown would feel that they could come and enjoy. And we think if you go there, I hope you will agree that we accomplished that. In building it, we also wanted to do it with safety. This is a slide that we're proud of. All of our workers start, and they have from the very beginning of this project, with a warm-up period and calisthenics. Because of this, we have eliminated a lot of the soft body injuries that are typical in a site like this. There was some grumbling at the first, but they were told, hey, look, football players do this before they play. You big guys can do this too. And as they saw that the people were not getting injured were indeed them, their enthusiasm for that grew. When our groundbreaking was until when we topped out was 2 years, a rather remarkable feat, and it'll be 3 years from when we broke construction that we moved over 2,100 people in. To do that, we have had about 1,400 people working at the site. The number varies depending upon the type of activity. The large group comes in at 6 and 7 a.m. in staggered shifts, works all day. Then there's another crew that works all night in the cranes, getting goods and materials up to the appropriate floor on the site so that when the large groups arrive in the morning, whatever they need, whether it's the raw steel at the top or whether it is the windows on the next several floors or whether it is the final carpets and woods that are going in on the bottom floors, as each team moves up the tower, they're there where you need them. This is just a shot of the workers installing the glass. Not the old-fashioned site that we've seen where people are dangling there totally unprotected on a beam and on a building in Wall Street having lunch. All of our workers, when they're on an exposed site, have been totally ensconced and are protected with straps that tie them in ultimately to the core of the building. We're very proud of a building this size so far, and we're past the risky part. I hate to say this with some temerity. We've not had a single death or a single serious injury on a site. And I was told at the beginning that to build this kind of a complex, they're just inevitable there are going to be 2 or 3 deaths. We said, that's not acceptable. Let's really work hard to prevent that. And so far, we have been successful in doing that. Just a slight, if you go into the rotunda and look straight up through the glass ceiling, that is what you see. You see the building, the tower leaning over you. And this shows the core of the rotunda somewhat under construction here on the second floor looking down. This is the entrance going into the tower. This is the auditorium. One of the things we really emphasized in this site was light. I've gotten so tired of walking down long corridors in other buildings in other cities where you had a long corridor, no light coming into it, and we challenged the architects to come up with something that didn't do that. So we have glass that goes floor to ceiling and are building one of the few glass auditoriums. I mean, auditoriums like this room are always totally enclosed. We have a 285-person auditorium where the entire east wall is glass facing our tower, which should provide a lot more light, obviously, into that site than you typically see in auditoriums that tend to be in basements of buildings or totally enclosed. Of course, there are blackout curtains and other curtains that you can use if you need to for whatever you're showing there. 2 restaurants. This one is the restaurant on the ground floor, which, as Steve said, was intentionally designed so that not all of our employees could eat there at one time. We did not want to crush all the other good restaurants in town. We did want to invite people into ours, so this restaurant is not the private corporate cafeteria that you typically see. It's totally open to the public, so come over there and spend your hard-earned dollars and we'll give you a good meal. At the top of the building is going to be a 2-story restaurant, bar, and banquet facilities, wedding reception facilities. This is just a mock-up of it now, because if you were to go there today, you would see raw steel. No, the plumbing is maybe in. They're just really, it is a very much of a construction site. So that sort of gives you a couple of slides of the building itself. One of the things that we wanted to do when we started on this project was to make sure it was LEED certified, and to hopefully get as high up as we reasonably could in going through the LEED process. If you look at Oklahoma, there are 36 buildings that are LEED certified, and of course there are 4 levels there. You can be certified, which is the base level. You can then go up to silver, gold, and platinum. There are only 12 certified gold LEED buildings in Oklahoma, and those are all, 9 of those are government buildings. They're all much, much smaller buildings than we have. So we will have the only LEED gold certified building in the state of Oklahoma, which is a pretty good target. Of course, we won't know that we have that until the U.S. Green Buildings Council certifies that once we have completed the building and sent the final materials for them. Of course, we started with a site that was a brownfield site. It was not environmentally sensitive, obviously being already in the middle of downtown and a site that had already had a good deal of commercial activity on it. And it's a site that really is as close to downtown as it existed at the time as a new site could be, and yet give us plenty of room to build the various complexes that we have, and plenty of room to dedicate about 20% of our site to public open spaces. There is almost a 3-acre garden and area with fountains and trees and a little lawn in the middle of our site facing the Mary Gardens that is totally open to the public, and I hope once we get it finished in the next couple of weeks will be enjoyed by the public. About 80,000 square feet of land is there. A variety of other things like bicycle racks and on-site showers and easy access to transportation and those kinds of things that we looked at in building this. To date, 93% of the construction waste has been recycled, which is an exceptional rate. You can see there the various tons of concrete and wood and metal and gypsum that we have recycled. The one that actually impresses me the most is the 6 tons of plastic. You know, plastic's pretty light. It's not like concrete. 6 tons of plastic is a lot of plastic to send through recycling, so I'm very pleased with that. The whole design of the building was designed to be as energy efficient as we can make it. You can see that from the geometry of the building with the various nooks and crannies. It's kind of like a squashed triangle. We challenged the architect to come up with a new name. There's something like 16 different surfaces on it, so it's a very unusually shaped building. That creates a lot of shading. Both that and the fins that you see create a lot of shading. In fact, I was with an architect from out of town a couple of weeks ago who looked at our building from afar and said, is the glass you have there on those corners, is that a different color because it looks darker? Well, it did look darker because the shade was protecting it. The glass was actually all the same, but it looked darker because that shading was protecting it, and that, of course, results in energy efficiency. I think it's interesting, if you look around this city, you can almost get a case history in the evolution of thinking about how you make an energy efficient building. You started out with some of the buildings that had lots of glass. The Chase Tower, former Liberty Tower, had big windows. And then when they built Leadership, and then when they built Corporate Tower and Leadership Tower, windows got smaller and smaller and smaller because the thinking was the windows allow heat and cold in. The glass was not thermally efficient. So we're going to make it energy efficiency by making the office darker and darker. We have done exactly the opposite. And this is the best way to do it based on current technology, because glass now is so thermally efficient that we have floor-to-ceiling glass, which would have been unthinkable 20 years ago. Floor-to-ceiling glass, which lets a huge amount of light into the space, which significantly reduces the consumption of electricity for lighting. We have very efficient light fixtures. We have light fixtures that dim automatically based upon the amount of light that is coming into the room, so that if it gets dark and cloudy, the lights brighten up. If the sun is streaming into your office, the lights go off. They're occupancy sensors, so when you walk out after a designated amount of time, the lights automatically go off. So a very efficient system. The hallways, for all the exterior offices, just as it's floor-to-ceiling gas on the outside of the building, the hallway, or the wall between an exterior office and the hallway, it too is floor-to-ceiling glass. So there is a huge amount of glass or light that comes flooding into our building, so that anyone who has an interior workspace can sit there and look straight outside. Now, ironically, you don't get a LEED credit for that, because the rules say that if it's shared light inside, it doesn't count. I never know if you and I share the sunset that it somehow detracts from the overall view, but nevertheless, it does, but that is what it is. So I don't think you will find a building that I've ever seen that has more light in it. When you walk down any hallway, at the end of the hallway, you do not see an office building that is enclosed. You see a window that looks straight outside. When you arrive, and I've got a slide here in a minute that'll show this, when you arrive on any elevator bank, you're not in an enclosed elevator bank. You can see through a glass door, through a coffee area, out a glass window. So there's more light and glass in this building than you can imagine. We used a raised floor, which is very efficient in terms of heating and air. It allows each person on his own, without consulting with anybody, to turn up the volume of air, whether it's cooling or heating, in their office, without having to call an office manager and turn up an entire half of a floor or a quarter of a floor so that one person is cold and the one in the next office is hot. Everyone can adjust their own temperature in their own office to suit themselves. Water conservation in this building is something we also focused on. We're at about 42% of the typical water consumption in a building this side, which under the LEED guidelines is characterized as exemplary performance. We did that both by landscaping and design of the landscaping outside that reduces about 50% of the water that's needed for outside. Low flow lavatories, automatic wash basins, all of those kinds of things. A green roof, partially green roofs that help mitigate some of that. I mentioned earlier, this is a picture. You can't see it here, but if you're in this, in the elevator banks and you're looking outside, you can see outside. 60% of the wood was used from, for all of the interior wood, was used from sustainable sources in various parts of it. Steve Mason made mention of Project 180 and the TIF financing. When we were planning this building, and let me just give you a slide to show how that was. when we were planning this building, we would bring architects and landscapes architects into Oklahoma City and walk them around downtown so that they could see the context in which they were going to build a building. They could see the heritage. We'd walk around downtown. We'd walk through the Mary Gardens and inevitably find no one there. We'd walk over to Bricktown and the canals and find some light there. And they all made, all of the ones, had everyone that we were interviewing for a job come through, they all made the same observations, which really opened my eyes. One observation was, gee, you in Oklahoma City have done a great job with renovating buildings. You've built a new, the Ford Center, now the Chesapeake Center. You've renovated the Convention Center. You built Bricktown. You built the canals. You built the ballpark down there. You've renovated the Civic Center. You built a new library. A long list of things you've done with buildings. But your streets and parks are terrible. And as you walked around, I realized that was true. They were just, I hadn't noticed them because if you lived downtown for decades, it just was what you expected. They said, you've done nothing with the streets and parks in this building. They're, the best of them are WPA projects coming out of the Depression. The worst are older than that. And Mary Gardens Park was sort of the leading example, hidden by giant berms, no visible entrance from any corner when you walked there. And if you did walk inside, virtually nobody there, and you felt uncomfortable, and you didn't know how to get from one part to the other. Another observation they made is they made the observation that in every city, there have to be some streets where the cars win and some streets where the pedestrian win. And in Bricktown, there is that balance of some streets that are pedestrian friendly and some that are more car friendly. But they said in the core of downtown, every street you had, the car wins. Show me the street in downtown core where the pedestrian wins. And indeed, if you go back to the thinking of the city, when we went through urban renewal in the 60s and 70s, the concept of the time was we're going to build these big 6-lane streets like Hudson that are designed to get traffic in and traffic out as fast as we can. Because it's just going to be a place you work. It's not going to be a place where you do anything other than work. And so we're going to design all these one-way streets that are designed to move the traffic in and out because there won't be any pedestrians. So we approached the city with the idea of creating a TIF that would take our tax dollars and put it into a TIF. It's the one time in my life I have truly enjoyed spending my own tax dollars. It's a rare opportunity to do that, but indeed we did. And we have totally renovated a large part of it. Just a slide on the Mary Gardens, we built a new bandstand, a new children's garden, a new restaurant, a new ice skating rink, totally changed the flow plan. We kept the botanical too, spent well over $30 million redoing that, built a fantastic entrance, this waterfall designed by Scott Morassi from Portland that announces to the world, this is a park, this is a friendly place to go, a walkway is right there in front of it, built a new band shell that is lit up very beautifully at night, built a children's garden with a children's fountain that adults love to play in too. In fact, there are 3 water features, and you'll find kids playing in those all the time because they're great fun. This is a picture it's hard to imagine. This particular waterfall mimics, or fountain mimics, an Oklahoma thunderstorm. When you opened it up last summer, we turned it on for the first time, and there is sound inside up in the roof that sounds like distant thunder. And then it's a little louder and a little louder, and you could see the people who are standing under this structure kind of looking around, looking up, trying to figure out what it was. Then light water starts coming down, a light sprinkle, and suddenly they're scattering from outside of this fountain because they're starting to get wet. And then there's this light that flashes, representing lightning, a clap of thunder, and a deluge of water comes pouring out of this fountain. Then there's a fog feature where it comes out. There are a crowd of about 50 kids standing there watching that when it came on, each looking up at mom and dad, wondering if it was okay to go play. And one kid stuck his toe in and then ran in a little bit, and suddenly all of these kids, fully dressed, ran into the fountain and got totally sopped and had a great time. A children's garden nearby, a an outdoor pavilion that during the winter is an ice skating rink with all of the ice skating equipment built in the basement, so you don't have to bring in noisy equipment. In the summer, that serves as an outdoor pavilion, an eating area where once a restaurant opens there, where you can sit next to what becomes a shallow pool, which is also a place for kids to play. And so that has really changed the dynamic of this 17-acre park in the middle of Oklahoma City. We also, of course, did an awful lot of we are in the process of redoing every street with new medians that are planted with energy efficient, water efficient native plants to the extent that we can, new lighting features, new parks, new wayfinding, really having the opportunity to look at every street in the downtown core area and rebuild it. The city officials tell me that they do not know of any other city that's ever had the opportunity at one time to go redesign all of the parks and all of the streets, all of the signs, all of the benches at one time with one design. So it is a great opportunity that we've had to do that. Now, it has caused a little mess. I sometimes walking down the street and hear someone muttering about the construction and how it changes from day to day, if not hour to hour, and I just kind of lower my head and shuffle on by, muttering, I don't know, they should do something about this. Blending in. My wife once called, not thinking about this, and said, Larry, they should do something. I said, well, I will tell they when I see them. So it has been a fun project. We started with a really a brownfield site that was an ugly parking lot with problems underneath, petroleum storage tanks, contaminated sand, water, contaminated groundwater, and we've created this building that redefines downtown. It provides a symbol, really, for the rebirth of downtown. I've heard the mayor say that before, that we didn't really have, like St. Louis did, a symbol of the rebirth for downtown. Hopefully we now have a symbol for the energy that all companies and all people, big, small, and everyone in between, have regenerated into this community, setting a new standard for energy construction in this building with a LEED certified gold building, and creating a TIF that allowed the city to redo all of its downtown area. So it's a project that has been great fun to work on. It's still undergoing, but I hope as you walk around downtown you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Larry just asked, does anyone have any questions of Larry? He just said if you have any questions of him, he just asked me on the way down. Any questions you want to ask him? This now is the time to ask. And
Devon employees are excluded from asking questions. Thanks.
okay, thank you guys. Larry, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your example. Thank you for the dedication to the city of Oklahoma City. You know, you're an example to a lot of people, and your service to the community, and I appreciate it a lot. You know, basically, Devon is leading the way to the future development of downtown Oklahoma City. We're coming to a close, and real quickly, I want to thank all those sponsors that have donated prizes. Because of the time, I'm just going to pick their names, and at our booth, if you want to go by the DEQ booth, we'll have the winners for the prizes there because of the time constraints, because the bus tour starts at 2 o'clock, and for those going on the tour of the Brownfield sites, which, by the way, we stopped by the Devon building. So I believe we had 60 signed up, and a few more wanted to. So if you're still interested in the bus tour, go by there and see if there's some spots open on that. We would welcome you. But again, thank you so much for attending the 2012 Brownfields Conference. Have a good day.